welcome to another episode of the Best Book Club. I'm your host, Nu Futura, and this is the podcast where I discuss the best stories with the best minds in the community. On this episode, I'll be discussing the importance of stories in general with Hans Gutherson and ChaosReacon. Thank you both for joining me.
Glad to be back. It's been way too long since I've been on an episode. I'm missing it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's. I always like hearing both your perspectives. So, to start this whole discussion off, why do you personally enjoy reading and writing?
Wow, going right for the heart of things, right off the bat. The deep question. We talked about this a lot, so I guess I'll just go first. If you don't mind, Chaos, I can quickly try and sum up
Go
some
ahead.
stuff that people probably know, because I like to talk about this a lot, which is its own sort of storytelling in many different ways. But for me, there's a lot of answers to this question. One of them is that I was always drawn to storytelling. I mean, reading, writing, that escape that it creates in the all different forms of escape have always been very appealing to me, to live different lives or see different stories and to eventually create them my own, myself, I should say, has always been one of the most beautiful things I think I could possibly do with my time and life, and one of the most fulfilling, certainly. So it's definitely given me a purpose, I would say, to write. And I've never lost that love of reading that I grew up having, and just really enjoying a story and storytelling, and in all its forms, for being able to broaden my mind and grow as a person, which is a very difficult process to do in general. But reading makes it easier because you can live so many lives and see so many perspectives, and I think really become smarter and better in every way. And if you read enough, I still maintain it kind of breaks something in you once you read super amount and you've read so much and all this different stuff. And you think philosophically as well. I think that's a part of it. And if you write, I think that also helps. Because then you sort of see the world differently than some people do, the Philistines of the world. And you sort of realize, there's more to life than like money and material success, and it's like there's knowledge and learning and writing and storytelling, and there's a truth and a beauty to all that that sort of goes beyond anything else. So that's a kind of broad, very, I guess, waffly answer maybe to the question, but perhaps a vague answer to such a broad question is helpful to get us started.
For sure. How about you, Chaos?
Uh, for me, I personally like not just through writing and the stories that I read, but it's through all the different media that I consume, where it'll ultimately depend on some other factors like games. It's not always focused on the story or uh, depending on what kind of content it is, but story is one of the bigger reasons why I will tune into something, why I get so invested with it. Whether if it's just the subtle storytelling that some uh, games can give, or you like hacker and slasher films and you like seeing the uh, how does the story go from A to B. But stories in of themselves, it just for the readers, it helps broaden your horizon of what can happen next, or maybe you have a different idea than what the writer initially intended, but it still broadens your horizon of what is the story compared to a visual medium where you get the visuals of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's a personally a reason why I enjoy reading a book versus watching a movie of that same story, because there's so much visualization that I'm allowed to do when I don't
Mm,
have everything playing out directly in front of me.
well said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
guess because you can put yourself in it, right? If it's a book and a
absolutely.
story, and you can picture stuff differently, and it's
Mhm.
more open, in my experience, than a movie or a TV series, and you go in, and I think this was probably how a lot of people view media. This was certainly my experience when I was younger. I would expect adaptations to be incredibly close to the source material,
Yeah.
and I'd be very bothered when it wasn't. And I only realized later on in life, after seeing some very impressive adaptations, that translation presupposes a loss, and often that's what we think of when we think of actual work being translated from one language to another. But what is a film adaptation if not translating something from the medium of writing to a visual medium? So of course
Mm-hmm.
there must be some changes. But of course, if we're going to have someone direct a project, if we're going to have people act in it, shouldn't they be allowed to, put some interpretation on it and perhaps add something to the source material? So Mike Flanagan being one of the best at this, I think, if we think of some of the works he's adapted, like Edgar Allan Poe's works in the Usher series. He did Fall of the House of Usher, and as well as he adapted another series that'll come to me as I remember it. But you could tell like he was influenced by also the writer's life, and he was tying in some of that, and it was like this very deep sort of almost like homage to a lot of themes that are very prevalent in their work. And I was like, this is a good way to do an adaptation where it says something and goes a bit deeper than just sort of retelling the story. And then I guess the opposite side of that is, Wes Anderson's Roald Dahl adaptations on Netflix now, the new ones, and they're basically just someone reading the text, pretty much. Like the actors basically read the story very quickly, which is a bit bizarre. And they kind of, there's some acting it out, but it's basically word for word the story. So it's like you can't get much, closer to an adaptation than that. But I
Yeah.
don't really enjoy that as much as like tell me something about, the creator. Can you give me something of his life and why this story was meaningful? And that's a perspective I never really had until more recently when I saw like, adaptation can go deeper, and maybe it should in some ways. But I think to Chaos's earlier point, I just wanted to jump to that too. It's Chaos. You made the beautiful point that you hinted at. The stories are in everything, everywhere, and I think that's probably something we're going to come back to a lot too. So I just want to thank you for that excellent point you made.
Yeah, that is a very fair point. I just happen to like talking about written stories. That's all. um,
Yeah, of
but
course. As do we. We're writers,
yeah,
but
yep,
and I'm not an artist, unlike Chaos. But I imagine there's even a storytelling in art, which is difficult for me
hundred
to
percent.
comprehend as someone who's not an artist. But music, and not obviously the written sort of music where it's like lyrics and someone's telling a song, and of course the spectrum there of like Pearl Jam's Last Kiss, where he literally very explicitly tells you a
Yeah,
very clear story. But I'm thinking of things like Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd, right? And it's like just someone wailing and just screaming,
yeah,
and you're like, is there a story here? And I think there is, or in totally instrumental works, classical music, or in any genre. And I feel like there's storytelling there too. It's
yeah.
just harder to grasp. But I think as we're saying, stories are in everything, everywhere, because it's the foundation, I think, of how we understand the world. And I'm jumping ahead. I feel like I was gonna save that point for later, but you got me going. So
I mean, I think it is. Stories exist just as much in music. Um, I mean, lyrical music comes to mind immediately, but I've
yeah.
really gotten into music that's just instrumentals. And even there, it's like the most abstract kind of storytelling because there's not really any one thing to guide your ideas and tell you, okay, this is sort of what's happening. Um,
Mm,
but
yeah.
uh, things like what's the name? Earthless. They have 20-minute, 15-minute songs, and they go through a progression that I guess it would be hard to explain without going like super in depth with it. Maybe that would be kind of fun to do is do like song breakdowns, but it's just you can find stories anywhere, really. That's
Yes. So true. So
Yeah.
true.
So
I like
that
that the point was brought up, especially where uh for an upcoming story I was definitely influenced by Lorna Shore's music, particularly with the Pain Remains trilogy of songs.
hmm,
Because that is very true, like with adaptations, just what people bring into it. Like with those three songs altogether that make up 20 minutes of the album, you can tell that the original writer for the songs had a certain story when he was creating the songs. Then you have Will Ramos adding another layer on top of that, which is pretty funny because he says he's very much influenced by anime and whatnot, and he brought that aspect into the songs as well. But in that song in particular, then you also have the three music videos that accompany it, and that it brings in an entirely new aspect to what the original song was about.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, as soon as you put in a music video, that's a whole
Mm,
nother dimension of storytelling to work with.
well
It
said.
you can app it's like it's doesn't I don't think music videos always are the best
Yeah,
accompaniment to a
not
song, but
always.
when you find a really good one, it just makes that experience so much better.
Mm.
Yeah, well said for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's so I guess even to broaden the question even more and to bring about this whole topic of discussion, why do you believe that stories are important?
Damn. I'll answer that question. It's kind of exactly as how you asked it, instead of just explaining why I believe they are. I mean, we learn that they are in school, and we learn that they are in everyday life. But even that's not enough, because we learn lots of things, but we choose what we're going to take with us. And I think we understand fundamentally as human beings that storytelling isn't everything, but it's also how we understand the world and also ourselves. Studying stories and storytelling, and whether you study them or you create them or you just have them, which we all do, to describe who we are and what we do and everything we have done, it's all stories. Studying stories is studying human emotion, I believe. The one area of wonderful exploration that no other discipline handles or is even interested in. Um, so I think I've seen personally firsthand, as I noted, seeing how stories have grown my mind, and it's helped me understand other people and myself. And we cannot go without realizing, what we're doing right now is a story. Everything we do before and after this, there's storytelling involved in that. It really is how we shape reality, how we understand it, and how we then sort of pass it on. And I feel like I've seen that, obviously in my work as a journalist, clearly, where that's a different kind of storytelling, or in all the writing I've done in the community, where I'm trying to tell certain stories and all sorts of types of stories and stories within stories. And by that, I don't just mean the plots within plots, I mean the literal ideas of trying to say something to the community about themselves, while trying to tell a very erotic story. And can you do both, and what that sort of looks like. So I hope that kind of answers the question of why.
That is a very
Hopefully.
broad question on purpose. I mean, the point that you brought up, I 100% agree. The things that we learn and are taught aren't always the things that mean anything to us. So
Mm-hmm.
finding those, like, there's I know maybe like two or three books that I was assigned to read for school that I
Mm-hmm.
actually enjoyed. everything else is just, I don't really care about this because if
Yeah.
I had to put something down, I would probably say something like the choices, like having a choice on what to enjoy is huge on
Mm,
whether it becomes important and valuable to you.
nice. Love that. Yeah, and I'm glad you're not the sort of person who just reads like the high school curriculum and takes just those books to heart and then thinks, they're well read or something. Not to name any names, any names. But there's obviously so many books out there, so many different types of stories, like all human creativity, when we think about stories, it's everyone who's ever written a story or even just told a story, that time I went to the grocery store and this happened, whatever. It's
Hmm.
trying to pass something on, it's information, it's trying to
Yes.
communicate with people, it's creating belonging, it's creating, in our case, a very real community, which is obviously a word we use so often, but it has a very special connotation when we're talking about storytelling because we're trying to build that in many ways, from the stories we write to even how we talk about it and the ways we describe the history of it and trying to keep that. It's all stories all the way down, for sure.
Hmm. What do you think, Chaos?
Personally, for me, the way that I view how stories are important is that part of it is the journey, whether if it's something as simple as just going from A to B or someone just making a simple picture. There's always going to be someone who's going to look into it and see something else that potentially wasn't there before.
Hmm.
But it's also just the nature of storytelling of that we're all going through our lives, but we take moments and we try to tell that to someone else. Or if it's uh you stumble across an awesome video game or a movie and you're trying to tell someone else about it, further
Yeah.
spreading just how storytelling goes, just
Hmm.
trying to share these tales, even if it's trying to describe just what you saw and trying to tell it to others of and trying to convince them why you should go and check something out. But in the same vein, that is also the hurdle of it, because not everyone's going to be interested or in the moment. They're not necessarily looking for that kind of story. And it's almost something where they need to almost stumble upon it themselves.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
that's
Yeah,
the the
yeah, it's
the
true.
the recommendation of a story in itself can be a story.
Yeah, it is. And then the person who recommends the recommendation is a story. It's kind of bonkers when you think about
Mhm.
it, and the review of the review, and the person who does the Twitch stream of the game, and the person who
Yep.
watches it and tells somebody, it's all storytelling we do.
Hmm.
It's, you can't separate it from, I suppose, any act of communication
Yeah, and
that humans do.
you always put in your own spin on whatever the thing is. So you're adding your own
Mm-hmm.
personal touch,
Yep.
and
Always
adding
different.
something to that piece of work along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even if it's a discussion about a critique of a story where
Hmm.
I know uh, it was a big thing when the Nostalgia Critic tried to do a video on Pink Floyd's The Wall, and it's like, Doug, where were you even going with this? That was not the story at all.
Yeah. When it feels like they're just taking shots, and especially in that case they were trying to profit off of the wall, as I later learned, and just doing such a, felt like, disingenuous job of actually digging into what is a very deep and difficult to access piece of media. But
Mhm.
I think it's all storytelling, and especially, like you said, original storytelling. Unless I guess someone plagiarizes something straight up, just copy paste it, then I guess it's just the same story copied. That's the one exception, I guess, to putting your own
Mm.
touch on it and doing things different, and adding something to it. Because yeah, like even the nostalgic critic thing, they tried, I guess, something, and I think they were trying to be entertaining or something. But there's the level of effort you put in. I think is gonna change how it's received, obviously, and your intention behind it. So like you can tell any story you want, but there's gonna be these other factors, and it's sort of like what you're saying, Chaos. You could tell the most perfect story, but is it ahead of its time or something? And is someone that it's not well received until way later on,
Yeah.
or it's received by one small group of people in a way you never expected. So
Mm-hmm.
like who tell their own stories and interpret it in a different way, sort of thing. So, I mean, as soon as you create something, it feels like that story becomes other people's, and you can't stop that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
Hans, I think you bring up a
That
very good point
and
that people are not very good at recognizing quality storytelling in the present. It usually takes them a very long time to recognize the classics.
Yeah, I think that's certainly there's historical precedent for that, especially in art. We hear so much about all these artists who live in destitution or
Yeah.
whatever. That's such like a popular trope until they die and then they suddenly get rich. And it's like, were they just waiting for them to die? They want to pay them or
Yeah.
something, but they all stuff like that. But I mean, certainly there's artists and writers who are celebrated, if not to the same degree as like the heroes everyone celebrates. And I think I wonder a little bit with some of that, Shakespeare excluded. If people just start hyping someone up because that's who they all hype up, and it's just like, oh, this is the famous person, so we must all teach the famous person
Yeah.
because that's what's been done. And you got to think like, yeah, but what about the new people today and the new voices and all that talent? Why aren't they getting the same, attention? And they probably are in some cases, but not the same level that some of these famous people have gotten. And but some of them deserve that recognition and continue to. But certainly, yeah, there's undoubtedly there's been people ahead of their time
Hmm.
who really don't get their roses until it's too late, and it is a sad shame, absolutely.
well, that and there's how many people that just don't check out work until the creator has passed on.
Yeah, that's a great
Hmm.
point too. Yep. Yep.
Where I guess a way to explain it is just the reverence of paying respect to someone's work, even though that's your first time kind of going over it. Where
Yeah.
I guess that's just how some people find certain media. As I know, that was kind of like the thing with H.P. Lovecraft, where
Oh yeah.
whenever
Yeah.
when he put out
Great
his
example.
work for as whatever the quality some people may view his stuff, like while he was alive, his works weren't exploding like they were after his death.
Hmm.
Where then the Cthulhu mythos just exploded into something else entirely, where people
Yep.
were working with him prior to it, but not to just how big it got
Yes,
after his
now
passing.
it's huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great example for sure. And this is sort of, I guess, adjacent to what we're talking about, but I'm curious your thoughts on this. I feel like some people, and I never really realized this until talking with AP, when they think about media to consume, they want something that's going to change their life. Like they won't be satisfied with anything less than that. If there's someone who doesn't read a lot or consume a lot of media, and I didn't realize this, but AP is sort of this sort of type, Amy Pennies, and he was like he would look online and people would say this changed my life, this movie, this book, and he would like go into it expecting his own life would be changed. And that blows my mind that like first of all, like the idea that you believe people on the internet saying that it changed their life and you think that's going to change your own. But I wonder, like in your experience, have you encountered people or even been there yourself where you're like, no, I expect this thing, whether through hype or because I'm just in that mindset, like this thing I'm reading or watching, it needs to have a huge impact on me, and if it doesn't, I'm gonna be disappointed or I'm not interested in it. And I feel like that maybe fits into this idea of like when someone dies, as you well said, Chaos, there's a reverence there. So I think when they're getting hyped up to that degree and everyone's sort of looking at them with such reverence and respect, people then say like, "Oh, well, I have to check out this. This must be, next level." So I wonder, like, for both of you, like, is that something you've thought about, like this idea that people need media that's gonna like transform their lives, and that's what they're after?
I think it is important to. I think there's multiple aspects to this question. It is important for people to have pieces of media and stories that do impact them in that way. I don't know if it's really a good thing or not to go into something expecting it to change your world. But I know that uh, in my own pursuit of finding good stories, I always go into ones that have been hyped up like that, like going like it's changed my world. I always go into them with a more critical eye than I normally would. Like I don't go into stories expecting them to change my life, but if they do, then damn, that's a good story. And if it doesn't, because I've experienced so many other stories already, it's like, all right, well, that was fine, but I kind of wish it had done something because you only have so much
True.
time in life. So
That's
you
true.
want to be able to experience as much of the greatest as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So there probably is something to what AP's saying. He's probably not alone in some of that, but he maybe takes it to an extreme. He is a very kind of black and white sort of person. And maybe in some ways that's good, like you said, time is short. You want to go into things and take the best of it, in terms of storytelling. Not waste your time, I suppose, on stuff that isn't going to move you when you can do other stuff with your time.
Hmm.
On the other end of things, like that's the dual nature of recommendations, where on the one hand you want to share the media that had an impact on you, but whether the that material it's not as impactful on other people, or someone ends up making it seem like it's something else, and so some people will end up getting a false impression than what the material was. An
Absolutely.
example can be is like how big Frozen got, and so you hear about the hype, but then you watch
Mm-hmm.
it for yourself, and it may not
Yeah.
necessarily be
Yes.
what everybody was making it out to be.
That's exactly how I feel about that movie. Yeah.
Like
I
it, like the movie was fine and everything, but and part of it could be just because of what type of media it was meant for, and just how the audience uh ran away with it.
yeah.
Because I kind of had a similar experience with the series Cowboy Bebop, but
Mhm.
that was more so I was trying to look for something more in it when I had the recommendation for it, compared to just sitting down, just enjoying my time with the kind of story that it was.
Yeah. I yeah, I think Frozen just was not the kind of story for me. It was not a story written for me. So, yeah.
Mm, that's fair. Let It
Well,
Go
it's
is this
definitely
kind of
meant.
universally applicable song. Like, it is an
Eh.
allegory, I think, to basically anyone who feels like they can't hide something, or doesn't want to, including us with the fetish. But when you make something so universal as a song like that, you're certainly not you're gonna lose reaching some of those more niche audiences. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, I like the movie. I think that it was either the first time I watched it or a rewatch. I was sort of, yeah, I wasn't like as into it in the hype, and the second one doesn't really live up to the first one. But yeah, no, it's always gonna be a thing. I think there's movies I think are made for you, stories that are made for you as a person, and for whatever it is, whether it's something you're super interested in that time. at that time, like
Mm-hmm.
that could always change later in the story. So that's why people like, and I always say, what's your favorite books or whatever, and I think what my dad's always said too is like, it's gonna change. Like I might be in a certain mood where I'm thinking about something, and I'm loving this thing, but if you ask me in a month from now, I'm gonna say no, this is my favorite or something. And I think that's the way you should live life, not so unchanging. And it's good to have things you do always go back to, and that sort of shape you. And I think that's important as well. Um, but not being so set and like this is the best thing ever. Nothing's ever going to top this, and I
Yeah.
will always believe that. It's like what
Yeah.
a limiting way to live. When storytelling is always changing,
Yeah.
when the stories we should be consuming are always changing. And I mean, yeah, to stop reading, to stop consuming stories, to stop creating them in whatever form, I think is to die. Put it dramatically,
Yes.
quite darkly, but I think it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know how good of a mindset it is to have, but I do sort of look at stories as like I have a very set favorites list basically. Um but that's only because I haven't found anything that fits into it. And I sort of look at stories in whatever form they take as like, does this equal or surpass what I already enjoy?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think we all do that in some ways. We see really classic movies or ones we really love, and I think in to some degree more or less depending on the movie, if it's a sequel especially, stuff like that, obviously that bar is going to be higher. But yeah, I think yeah, what you're talking about is a universal sort of, if you're into stories, like if you're someone who consumes a lot of media, you're thinking that, and I think that is a good way to think. I think it's a natural way to think because the mind, I feel like needs to categorize and make order of things.
Absolutely.
And plus, it's helpful if you are trying to tell other people about these things to have an idea, and it tells you who you are as well to know what stories you hold dear and what you're looking to kind of hopefully surpass. As long as you're not someone who goes in thinking like with a set expectation of like this is going to not impress me because it won't be as good, or this must impress me, because I think that's super
Right.
dangerous,
No,
and
you
that can
just
really hurt the story. I
yeah.
think when
I
you
think
put your own stories on top of it, it's hard.
absolutely. Yeah, I think just
Mhm.
going into the story having no expectations and then being pleasantly surprised when uh it does really well in your mind, or being
Yeah,
disappointed when it doesn't come across as well as it could have.
yeah, it's true. It's true for sure. Yeah, no, you're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched 12 Angry Men with JCCW a little while back, the original 1959,
Yeah,
1957,
great movie. Yeah,
it,
great movie.
it immediately is like, damn, this is one of my favorite movies because of how good it is.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I, I kind of knew a little bit of it because it's just one of those movies that is
Yeah.
everybody knows about. But
Yep.
going into it with no expectations is it is really hard to do, I think, with a lot of
Yes.
major stories that come out today. Like if like when Frozen was new, yeah, I mean,
Yep.
how do you avoid knowing anything about that and going in without any kind of expectation when the entire world is talking about it?
Yes. Very true.
And that's why
Very
I
true.
like to wait a long time for things to die out of the
Mm,
popular talk. Like it took me a long
yeah.
time to watch Breaking Bad, The Office, like all these major things, so I
Yeah.
can go in with my own expectations. I can forget about what everybody else said about it.
That's smart. That's a good way to do it. Although you risk being a little left out, but it is
I'll
it is
take
a
that.
it is a smart, yeah, it is, no, it's a smart approach. I mean, it is very smart. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned 12 Angry Men. I love that. Plus, as you
Yes.
know, I love those sort of stories. I go back to the Greek kind of storytelling roots when they were first trying to, I guess, codify storytelling, and they said, story should have people in one room, and that should be the action, and that everything in one room. And that movie's not all in one room, but it's very close to it.
Basically.
Um, And it's about one sort of thing, and it's basically over a very short period of time. So it
Mm-hmm.
basically is the three core storytelling keys that, way back in the Greeks, they said this is the best thing a story can do, and a story must have this, and their stories did. And obviously we've seen so many variety of stories over the years, and so many different ways to tell stories. I don't think we can say this is the best way to do it
No.
anymore, but it's a different way to see a story told, like in
Mm-hmm.
12 Angry Men, if you're not used to that. And it's such a just strong performance for the characters, and great back and forth between them, and great questions sort of brought up. So it's definitely a movie I recommend for everybody who wants to watch it. And the director is really good, Sidney Lumet. Sidney
Yeah.
Lumet is some of the biggest, I guess, most popular movies of the 70s and 80s because they're very, very good.
Yeah. If if you like characters at all, this is the movie to watch. It's all
Yeah.
characters. But you can
Yes. Yep.
listen to all of my praise for that movie on that podcast episode. Um, yeah, I mean, uh, I think stories create meaningful connections between the audience and basically any portion of that story. Like it creates connections between the audience and the writer, between the characters, between the setting, like all different kinds of things. People connect to anything in a story and they get value out of it. It might
Mm-hmm.
not be the thing that the writer intended them to pick up on, but in some ways that makes the story more enjoyable to some people.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. When they can make it their own, um, and sometimes in very unusual or unexpected ways. Like Chaos, you know this, but I saw a live performance of Rocky Horror Picture Show very recently, and that's a movie that's well known for audience interaction and one of the longest running movies in cinemas in the history of the world. And it's such a campy, kind of bizarre movie for those who haven't seen it, but it's I love the movie. I think it's one of my favorites. But yeah, the fact that now today people dress up in costumes, they cosplay, and they throw stuff at the screen and they yell stuff at different points, and there's all these rituals that have sort of emerged around it. This movie where really it is all about accepting who you are, not being afraid to, I guess, to put it, I guess, to let your freak flag fly, so to speak. Although the movie sort of puts it in different terms and kind of preempted that idea, um, way ahead of its time. That was 1975. I'm pretty sure that movie came out. So yeah, like that sort of
It was a
storytelling
stage
is
play
such a wild
before the movie,
example.
wasn't it?
That's true. Yes, stage play, and I'm guessing that you did not have people throwing stuff at the stage when it first came out. But when it was in theaters and cinemas now, that evolved as like the campy wild movie it is. So that's like a
Yeah,
crazy example, but certainly we hear all the time of like, you know, uh, the idea that, groups, different groups of in political affiliation, religious, etc., they can interpret something to their ends, and we see that I think throughout history. Um, or even just people reading a book or a speech and they say, oh yeah, this applies to us and this is about us, and how do I take that and sort of shape it so it fits my narrative, that I'm trying to espouse or sell or whatever. So yeah, it is that connection. It is trying to be part of something, I think, and using it. I mean, there's a lot we could talk about in terms of the community, but I feel like I'm jumping ahead, so I'll just kind of stop myself from rambling more there.
I was gonna say it kind of sounds like I've never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it sounds
Oh,
like
you should.
it's
before you'd said anything about
definitely an
the
experience.
before you said anything about the it being a play before being a movie, I was thinking like it sounds like it's a natural follow up to plays because I there is a sort of audience interaction when it's live on stage in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. it's come full circle. Like, just to very quickly mention Rocky Horror again, it's really come full circle because when I saw it live at a small community theater near me, they have all the rituals that my dad and I guess even or like people older than him who were at this show. There's quite a lot of old people dressed up to the nines for this. Who were doing this in theaters, and they were throwing popcorn at the screen or rice and yelling stuff at certain points. That a very choreographed kind of audience experience in some ways. That's just developed kind of organically over time. It just works and it's funny and it's just a thing to now go see the movie and yell stuff, and it's like, what movies do that, where it's like, yeah, at this moment when they say a toast, people throw toast at the screen. Like, no other movie in the world does that happen. Like, it's bizarre, and Rocky Horror works for that. But the live show, it had that. It had like cast members who would basically be doing that for the audience in case there wasn't anyone in the audience doing it. They'd be yelling some stuff that you would see. And they told us before we went, like, don't throw rice because it's a big mess. So I guess people have come and thrown rice and they've done all the stuff. But there's a lot of stuff you could do. And there were some people in the audience throwing stuff out. Like, before a person sang a song and the song started like, some of the time. So right before he says some of the time, someone in the audience is like, how often do you masturbate? And the song starts a beat later, some of the time, and we were burst out laughing, and we're like, "Where does this come from?" Like, and my dad's like, "None of that was there when I watched the movie." So it's like storytelling. This evolves, this full circle thing, It starts as a play. It becomes this movie that's not really popular when it comes out, but becomes a huge cult classic. And now when it's performed live, all these traditions and rituals of like that you see people do at the movies, you do it now live again. So it's like such a cool case study, I guess, of storytelling. And obviously the movie itself is such a cool story because it's an homage to scary movies of the 30s, 40s, 50s, those monster kind of movies, where scientists make something kind of thing. And it's also just a really cool progressive piece about, LGBTQ plus identity as well. And in my mind, in 1975, it's really ahead of its time for that. So highly recommend it. And if you're interested in storytelling, I guess you could certainly look at some of that evolution of people interacting with it, and the idea that sort of like what we're talking about. People are gonna take stuff from it. It's gonna be different stuff, and they're gonna do their own thing, and they're gonna interpret it. It's like the fan fiction we see in the community, just to a whole other crazy level. you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of a shame when I find adaptations, bringing it full circle back to that point, uh, that feel more like just bad fan fictions than
Yeah.
natural progressions of the story or evolutions on
Yeah.
it. Like Rob
Yeah.
Zombie's Halloween and the sequel that I recently watched. Oh,
Mm,
those were
yeah.
just a
Yeah. I
travesty
agree.
to watch.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to live up to those original Halloween movies, which I love, 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 love. Especially the first one.
Well, on the other end of it, it's what Rob Zombie was doing with those films. Like, if you're there for Michael Myers, then it's like, okay, those moments were good, but he also took that Halloween universe and turned it into something that's more akin to Rob Zombie's
Yes.
storytelling, and it's like it puts you off
Uh,
Yeah.
from what you
I
like
get that.
about
I love that
Halloween,
freak.
it, or it's just that that tonal disconnect where you're trying to look at the other denizens in the film, and it's like these are just people just turned up to 11. Like, who acts like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It didn't.
No, that's a
It.
great way of putting it. I love that you said Rob Zombie's like version of it, because like I can think of other directors and movies where it's like they had to put their spin on a thing. Wes
Mm,
Anderson being one of them with the Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I was like, I can appreciate and I guess understand, like, be impressed, I guess, by the fact they could turn something into literally their story, and it looks like such a them movie. But it doesn't mean I like the movie
Yeah. Well,
called.
I mean, even continuing to look at Halloween, the third movie, Season of the Witch by Tommy Lee Wallace. He directed it.
Yeah,
Uh, it is so different from the rest.
Yes.
And like,
Mm,
yeah, I've been going through all the Halloween movies. It is very
As
different,
you
but
should. Yeah.
the Rob
and especially
Zombie, I
bringing
have
up the third movie, like that was kind of where the original direction for Halloween was supposed to be. It wasn't originally supposed to just be focused on Michael Myers,
right.
but
Mm,
it was a little harder to justify since the second movie immediately jumped to
yes.
Michael Myers immediately right
Mhm.
Yeah.
after the events of the
A
first
clear
movie,
sequel. Yeah. A
Yeah.
clear and a well
which
Yeah.
done sequel. Yeah.
unfortunately was a big reason why the third movie got the reception that it did. It wasn't Michael.
Right.
And when you
Yeah.
think about it today, you think of Halloween with Michael Myers.
Mhm.
It's true. It's true.
Even
Like if
though
they
the
did
movie
Friday the
was
13th,
good for what it
movies.
was.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine. There's some things that I take issue with in the movie, but
Mm,
I do like that they tried different things, but
Mhm.
the only reason really that that movie exists is because the person who owned the rights to the name was able to make a third movie and he wanted to. So I that
like, yeah.
the
Yeah.
sequel was supposed to be just the end of the series, but I do like that they
Yeah.
tried to do something different. But Rob Zombie,
Yeah.
his two movies, they don't, because Halloween, the original, immediately had such a distinct villain and tone and aesthetic.
Yeah.
It is extremely difficult to do something with that and then try to make it your own thing. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
I liked House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie movie. I thought it worked pretty well. And that's because it was his own thing. He didn't have
Mhm.
any
Yeah.
kind of outside aspects that people would go into with preconceived expectations or notions about what should be in this movie. I think if he had just did his own two movies rather than using the names of
Yeah.
the franchise and characters, then I think it would have worked. But because
Yeah.
there's already such an iconic portrayal, that if there
It's true.
already
Yeah.
is an iconic portrayal of something,
Yeah.
you really gotta be doing a favor to that franchise or make like improving it or evolving it in some way that is enjoyable.
Yeah.
Uh,
I like the reboots they did. If you've seen those, the
yeah,
3
they're
they did.
next. They're
Yeah,
next.
they're good. I enjoyed them. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts because I feel like they did do what you're saying. Like they're not the Rob Zombie versions. And I think when I think back at the Rob Zombie one, but it's been a while since I've seen it. Chaos, you can correct me if I'm wrong enough as well, of course. But the thing with the original Halloweens, which I love, is like it's a very clearly good versus evil story. Michael, we do know a bit about Michael, but it's like
Just a
it's
little
not
bit.
his movie. It's not his perspective. Whereas with Rob Zombie, he becomes the main character, and I guess we're
Yeah.
supposed to kind of, sympathize with him, and that's not
Yeah.
what we should be doing in these slasher movies. Like, we can understand their origin, like the Jasons, the Michaels. That's fine. That's part of the mythos of a slasher. But to then be like, now they're the main character and we're rooting for them, I feel like that's flipping the formula in a way that doesn't really work. I think, if
Yeah.
you
I
ask
mean,
me.
Mm,
That's why I would argue those films that do that, where they're kind of the heroes, aren't as successful or good.
yeah.
Although I might be simplifying it too much.
I don't think that's necessarily what Rob Zombie was going for. To just
Okay.
you're rooting for Michael, like it's kind of one of those things of it's a hacker slasher film that you're kind of rooting for the villain. Just yeah, go get him. That person was an asshole, get him.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
on the other hand, what something that you were kind of bringing up is that with the prologue to the first Rob Zombie Halloween film, it does kind of give you that you kind of feel a bit of remorse for you see how Michael turned out the way that he was supposed to be. And originally, that was supposed to be the entirety of the first movie. That what Rob Zombie saw for the creation of it, the second film would have been the latter half of the first one. And clearly, what eventually became Halloween 2, Rob Zombie really didn't want to come back for it. Or at that point, he was just the director and he was just continuing the zombie verse of the Halloween films.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, see,
And when you see the interviews with him, like you definitely hear on how it just turned into another job where it was a 9 to 5, just clocking in just to continue this, rather than he was personally really invested in the creation of it.
Yeah.
And it was also one of those things where, what's the producer's name? Cod or something like that, where it was,
Cod.
yes, make me another Halloween.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, where there was talks of there being a third Halloween film, but it was either Rob Zombie really didn't want it, so he was asking for a lot more money compared to the other films, and that just people or directors and writers weren't coming to the table to continue that storyline, which ultimately I think was for the better. Because otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten the reboot with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm curious to see how these 3 sequels to the original are. They're up next, but I've been putting small, just the small portions of my thoughts on each movie on DA. So if you're curious about how I feel about each one, you can check that out. But yeah, I think just to do a quick thing with the biggest issues I have with Rob Zombie's movies is that Michael has a backstory, because that just makes him another person instead of the epitome of evil, which I think he should be. And literally every single person is an asshole to him. So why wouldn't he become mass murderer? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to just stories in general, I think stories are the real cornerstone of the wedgie community. Yeah, we have videos both from studios and ones you find in the wild of regular people. You have all kinds of art. There's multiple different ways that we express our creativity. But the one aspect that literally anybody can do is write a story. It might not be a masterpiece, and it might not get a whole lot of views or people looking at it or commenting, giving feedback, but it's something that you created that didn't exist before. And like you said pretty early on in this conversation, Hans, it gives you a sense of ownership and a feeling of belonging to something bigger than yourself, where normally it's just something you get off to and then you go about the rest of your day.
Yeah. Drop the mic, Noof. You just nailed it. Drop the mic. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, if we look historically, you know, when back at the old Wedgie Girls website, I can recall, you know, that stories are the foundation of that website, and they really are. And, you know, but even back if you talk to JR, I know we've I think all have, when he talks about the history, you know, the videos came a bit later because the internet was just starting up, but from the earliest days you could get stories. And obviously, like you said beautifully, anyone could do it, even me. I'm not an artist, I couldn't draw a thing, but I settle for stories, to put it that way. It might be a kind of down pushing down stories, which I often do, but you know, it's true. Anyone can do it, and it's such a powerful thing. And stories can exist on any website, as they have. You know, DA, which is an art website, and it's sort of made for artists. Writers have made a home for themselves.
We forced our way in.
We forced our way in, and we do that. And that's what the storytelling is. We invade, I guess, from a writer perspective, writer storytelling. You know, so certainly, I don't want to say much because you summed it up so well. But yeah, I'll just second everything you said, because it's beautifully put.
Yeah. I'm along with just with having those feelings of ownership and belonging, writing and reading are just very healthy outlets for stress and negative emotions.
Mm,
They
yeah.
allow you to experience things you might not normally, or they just allow you to get out of your own life and your own head for a little while and see what something else is like. Like that's like reading Harry Potter growing up.
Mm,
That was such a comfort series to me. Just
yeah.
always being able to get out of my own mundane life and jump into a quite literally magical world.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
awesome.
You and our whole generation, and even
Yep.
older people, like
Yep.
our parents, they were into it, and I assume even older, but I know like the age people of our parents' ages were reading it. It was a huge phenomenon because I think we all wanted that kind of escape, and I was weirdly thinking about Harry Potter the other day, thinking, it is those that. The very key moment that we almost all experience of transitioning to different critical points in your life. You're starting at a new school and you're trying to want that belonging to fit in somewhere, to have friends who sort of ride or die. And Harry gets that. And he goes through he gets to be this amazing person who's not just living in a terrible sort of situation. He gets to be a huge hero, and he never even expected this whole world that he's a part of. And like, who wouldn't want that? So there's beautiful parts in Harry Potter that I think make it this story that certainly I think everybody should read and watch the
Mhm.
movies because I think they're great
Oh god.
adaptations.
I have to say I will be the counterpoint to that. Don't watch the movies. I don't recommend them, but that's also that's I think I'm sure there are a great number of people who enjoy the movies, but from my perspective as a mega fan of Harry Potter, I don't think they're very
Yeah.
good.
No, and that's okay.
I'll
I mean,
be
this is
that.
totally go ahead, Chaos. Sorry.
I'll be that middle ground, and I would recommend checking out both and seeing what you like about both of them. Because
That's the best
in Harry
perspective to
Potter, in
have.
particular,
That is a good
I
perspective. Yeah.
I found that at least in the last book, like the last scene, it kind of felt like, okay, we're rushing into this one aspect, and it felt very rushed
Hmm.
going into it, where the movies flesh it out more. And a reason why I suggest to check it out is for something like a series like Berserk, where the manga is highly acclaimed, but how many people are honestly just wanting to just sit down, look at the 400 plus chapters to this epic saga, where you have the 97 anime doing a decent job, but it's not perfect either.
Yeah. Well, I think honestly,
And
manga.
especially like uh sorry, I
Oh,
just
you
want
go
to
ahead. Keep going.
get this one last example. And are you guys familiar with the artist Junji Ito?
Absolutely, yeah. Uzumaki,
So is he the guy who
fantastic.
did Spiral? Did he do
Mhm.
Spiral or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uzumaki, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Reason why I bring him up is because, well, he has done like the Rob Zombie thing, where he has done adaptations of other people's work, whether if it's Frankenstein, where he adapts the original novel, and just how starkly different the novel was compared to what people think Frankenstein to be. Or on the other end, there's No Longer Human, where Junji Ito brings his style to these stories. Where, and I think where Ito does the right way of adapting, that he brings his style and has it accompany these other stories. Where
Yeah.
then you go and look at Uzumaki, where some people, they do have some issues with it, but you see what his style is.
Yeah. Junji Ito is definitely not. I don't think it appeals to every person, but it is so good.
Mm,
Like the Enigma at Amagara Fault. Ooh, so good. Ooh. Ooh, creepy as hell. So good. Joji Ito is one of the best. But I think when you look at specifically manga and anime, the adapting manga to anime, I think, is very different than adapting a book to a movie or really any kind of other adaptation because of the way that anime is created. If it is the adaptation of the manga, where it's a TV show, so it continuously it's not just a single standalone movie or something where you need to fit the entire story in a single hour and a half, 2 hours. So I feel that anime far more often captures most of, if not all of, the important context that you get from the source material that is so often cut for time in any other kind of adaptation.
The only thing I will push back on um, is that anime it's ultimately like how we would view cartoons or other TV series, where the MCU definitely gets its criticisms for how far it steps away from the original source material just to tell a certain story.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the better, and many times not.
Yeah.
In
That
for some of the lesser known properties.
yeah, I, yeah, I was gonna
So
say
it's
that the
ultimately whoever is trying to do the adaptation.
yeah,
And to your point, uh, anime probably does it better because many of the properties, like, people are coming for that property, and a lot of the times where there is a change, it's because they either ran out of material to adapt, or they have to follow censorship laws, and
yep,
so they had to cut things out.
uh-huh. Yeah, and that is that, and also the fact that anime needs to be produced at the same time that a manga is still ongoing means that it's extremely susceptible to needing to fill the time, and so entire filler arcs are created so that the mangaka has time to create more material. I think that's a major fault of anime. Like I wish that anime was produced at least once a large portion of the material is done so that it can just tell the story. But I do really enjoy having a much closer one-to-one parallel because I am a person who enjoys just seeing the story that I already enjoy put onto a moving picture or the big stage.
And that's fair. It's trying to catch something when it's relevant, rather
Yes.
than it's how far along and the relevance isn't there anymore.
Yeah, and that's fair. I completely understand that.
Which, for some series like My Hero Academia, uh, to my knowledge, it was far enough along where that doesn't become an issue where they ran out of material to adapt. But
Mm,
that does become the concern of, when do you jump on the opportunity
right.
before that opportunity is wasted?
Yeah. I would say that if you're making an anime for a manga that is still pretty recent or there's not a whole lot of chapters for, I would say that it shows that there's not a whole lot of confidence that it's going to be a an enduring piece of entertainment. Like if you look at like the Bleach Thousand Year Blood War anime adaptation, that was 5 years. I think it started in 2021. That was 5 years after the manga ended, and people have been praising it like crazy. I'm waiting for it to be done so I can just watch the whole thing. But it has taken some drastic liberties with the source material, but just moving things around so it flows better and like actually fixing problems with the original manga, like completely removing plot points that are dropped and never worked on ever. It The Thousand Year Blood War and adaptation, I think, is a fantastic example of doing an anime once time has passed, like giving the manga time to either complete or get far enough along, because it does seem to be doing it does seem to have done a fantastic job of capturing that original story while improving it.
That's that's definitely something where it's easier to say in hindsight. Where especially for that type of series, like Bleach was a big renowned Shonen Jump
Yep.
franchise,
Big
where
three.
it is something where if it didn't have the audience that it did, the for as good the 1,000 year what was it, the 1,000 year Blood War,
Yeah.
where I'm familiar enough to know kind of roughly what the arc is, but in the same vein, if it didn't have its audience, like how many people came from watching the anime to then reading the source material?
I honestly don't know.
And it's one of those things where it's you can't hold off on something because a lot of things will ultimately bring together the audience for a franchise. Like if it stays as a manga, how much does that limit the
That is very
reach
true.
of
That's
people who
very
would
true.
even be aware of it?
Yeah, that is a very fair point. A number of people do. A lot of people have found at least Bleach through the anime, and then like this guy that I have listened to on YouTube for 3 years now. It just always he's talked about Bleach, and he found it through the anime first. That is a very fair point. I just wish they would wait longer so there's not so much filler, because it is very
Well,
hard to.
on the other end of it, it's like the perspective of the creator. You want to release the material, but you have to build up, you have to make
Yeah.
it, and sometimes that is the most anguishing part of being the creator, that you want to have it already released, but you still have to work on it so that you can even release it.
Right. Yeah.
As that's the only thing that's stopping me from releasing the next part two New Life, is working on the illustration. And it's all because of the line art style that I decided to go for. It just takes so much longer to complete.
But once it's
Yeah, I
done, then
guess what
you'll.
we're kind of talking about in some ways too is like, storytelling doesn't happen in a vacuum. And the way we're
Mm,
sort of talking at first is you kind of think that you write a thing and then life is good. But in a lot of cases, I suppose in the community, but not really because we haven't really businessified writing to the same degree as art or video production, obviously.
Mhm.
Although there's some exceptions of people who have Patreons for it, but not many for stories. It's the idea that yeah, if like an audience wants something, or you have other stakeholders involved, how like that becomes a whole other podcast episode around what does the storytelling change? How do you keep it, true to the creator's voice? And these things are very important to people. How do you sort of maintain all of that? And we touched on this in a few ways already throughout our conversation, from Rob Zombie having to come back, to just the idea that, there's an adaptation, people are going to be paying money to see something, and some of them are just going to want the same experience they already enjoyed. But what about the people who don't have that? Like, or because it's a different medium, how do you do something differently, or how do you translate it, in a way that makes
Yeah.
sense in
Yeah.
general? So, yeah, it's so many questions to think about with storytelling, including the fact that like, there's so many questions, and anything could sort of be asked of this topic, as broad as it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But I
mm.
would say that the writing is it might not it might be what am I trying to say here? writing has commissions, and those have been
It's
around.
true.
Like, that's a very big part of, right. Like, Saseda is all about commissions. He gets all kinds of commissions. First one that comes, I can't really think of anybody else, but the writers do commissions all the time.
You're right,
That is a
you're
major
right, it
part.
is a model. It is a
Yeah,
model
it's
for
just
all
not as,
creation in the community,
yeah.
including video production, yeah, art, writing. You're right, like, we're not excluded from this. We certainly don't make as much, as any other medium, and it doesn't get the same popularity, obviously. But you're 100% right. There are commissions, there are people who are doing it in other ways. For example, Sasita has tried the model of publishing his books, and Shadow Melder and I have done it. So
Hmm.
there's ways to do it. There's certainly, like, there's money to be made from it, and of course opening up questions of, what that looks like. How do you make sure, if you're asking for money, how do you make sure what you're delivering is valuable? But of course, as you noted, if there's people willing to pay for it, which is
Yeah,
reassuring at
yeah,
the very least. The storytelling has value for consumers within the community, not just for us writers, who believe it should, and that does have value intrinsically, but
yeah,
that people want to pay for it is reassuring, I think, in many ways.
yeah. There's value from the traditional viewpoint.
Yes.
It's just that we've been getting metaphorical value out of
Yes.
stories for a lot
Yes.
longer.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, do you think that the fracturing and privatization of this single community into multiple smaller ones has had any effect on the stories that are being written?
Yeah, wow, what an awesome question. I love speaking about that trend that I spotted. And I'm sure others have noticed too, but I was among some of the first to be like, you know this is happening, right? Although I think we all sort of realized it intrinsically, as a community when we noticed other sites popping up and Lucky Fish forums kind of dissolving before our eyes like quicksand. Um, I'll answer that question. Then there's couple other kind of great insights, but I might save them. We'll see. But yeah, I think, yeah, what we see obviously with the fragmentation is more variety of stories, and variety in so many different senses. Basically, any way you can interpret it in terms of, when you're on Lucky Fish forums, it was primarily female and female stories throughout its history, and that was it. And once people, once sites like Wedgie Buddies emerges, DA becomes bigger, you can have MF stuff, you could have MM content, and you could have things even beyond that. You know, um, so
Yeah.
that's a level of variety
Real
that we
quick,
see
I
with the
do want to say,
fragmentation.
I don't understand why there weren't male female wedgies on Lucky
Yes.
Fetish, because the female would still
Yeah,
be
why
getting the
were
wedgie.
males so hated?
I
Yeah,
don't
why were
know.
males so hated on there was a few obvious exceptions, the remote being one of them that was popular.
Yeah.
Although when you read it back, the quality,
Yeah.
obviously is not up to
It's
par,
not,
but it was an
doesn't
example
quite
of
hold up.
an MF. And other times when you look through comments, you will see on Lucky Fish forums people being like, "But there's a dude, no man," and they're quite upset to see guys there. And that's a nature of, I guess, the community on that site and what the stories they expect, and that's obviously going to dictate what storytellers do. If they see no one's going to like this, so they're going to critique it, unless they're a bit wild or just shit starters, they're going to avoid that unless they want, so they're going to go other places, and so we can get that variety. And then obviously as well, interactive stories on sites like writing.com, as difficult as that site is to navigate. Now Wattpad now, and the thing too is, like, when we're not all in one place, and I've said this before, the rules that we have for each other and the standards that we sort of are building over time on, like, a Lucky Fish forums, where we're kind of venerating stories that are popular and we all like, and we say we want more like this, that doesn't exist on, like, a Wattpad or Experience Project before it. People just do whatever, and it's a lot of garbage a lot of the time if you look at some of it. And of course, there's going to be some gems there, but they're not going to know if you ask some of these people, oh, what about Anti-Cherry? They're not going to know that history. And that's sad, but also maybe, they're free from some of that expectation. They can do their own thing and it can be totally new and different. So I suppose there's value in it, as sad as it makes me to think, some of these, if you ask people about, any great name in the community who we love, they might have no idea about them. Like that
Mm-hmm.
kind of terrifies me. But I suppose there's value in that too. So I think that answers your question. I won't go on to many other points yet. I think I might have a chance later, but I think that's the way to sort of answer your question, that there is value in having a variety of content, and I believe that's what fragmentation has led to. And that's one of the good things about fragmentation.
100% agree. Do you have any thoughts, Chaos?
Mm, the only thing I can really add on to it is that there's gotta be some influence due to the fragmentation, whether it's adding in something else than just making just a witchy story. But there's definitely that disconnect, as Hans was saying, where I know I definitely felt disconnected, and whether it's because of just the creation process that you spend a lot more time on your own stuff that you don't necessarily have the time to go through other people's things, or some groups will blacklist you for whatever reason. And so it does, while it can help influence, it can also be a little bit of a hindrance that some people's reach might be stifled because of how fractured the community is.
Yeah. I mean, you might just not even know where to go, what these different
Yes.
locations are.
Yep. Absolutely.
Or some people will only get their stuff from a few sources, and depending on the places, uh, someone that you follow might not even be allowed to even post any of their stuff just because someone has a grudge against them.
Yeah. Yeah, it can become a lot easier to be exclusive and hoity-toity if you have your own gated community, essentially.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. I've thought about, like, oh yeah, I could start some kind of, like, all these ideas. Oh, it's some kind of subscription service for content or something. But just the logistics of that sort of thing. And yeah, the idea that what are you going to be missing out on if you start saying, like, yeah, I want content that meets these requirements or something. And even if you're quite open with some of that, or you create a new site, no guarantees people are going to find it or go to
Mm-hmm.
it, or it's going to become what you want it to be, and because now a lot of stuff, if people are just looking for videos on social media, for example, you have all those platforms for stuff, or if they're satisfied with just a few number of creators on DA,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all they want to see and all they need, or if they don't even know where the content is, as you rightly put, another scary thought, where they're on Wattpad and they think that's the be all end all of the community,
Or if you're
for
just on
example, or somewhere else,
if you're just on DeviantArt and there's a
Yep,
million creators that you don't even know
it's
about that are
true.
on that same platform because there's
It's
no
true, and you
centralized
can't
way to
find them.
look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It's not easy. It's
No.
really not
No.
easy, and as someone who often looks there, trying to find new stuff, it is not easy to keep track of them once you discover them. Even if you favorite the works, then you're gonna have to go back to the favorites and stuff. And as soon as you start watching like a large number of them, and there are a lot on DA, it becomes difficult to keep track of who's updating and who's new, and like who's been doing new stuff and what are you missing. It's really a Herculean kind of effort, and when it's so spread out on a site like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not built for us writers, It's built
No.
for looking at some cool art, and that's its value, I guess. It's like true purpose.
Yeah.
And so we try and make the best of it on that site because there is an audience there, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, the name implies that it's perfect for us.
Yeah, yes, that is true. Not the art part, but the deviant
Well,
part.
hey, hey, are you saying
Built
that
for us.
writing isn't an art? I
Oh,
think it
true. No,
is.
you're right. It is built for us. No, you're right. All 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um. Yeah. I think you brought up a very fair point, Hans. That the having just a single location means that people are going to have standards and rules around what's allowed, what's not, and all that. And so having all these different communities and all over the place, it for different kinds of interests and what people want to
Yeah.
see, it absolutely allows for a lot more variety, and people can be more comfortable to share what they think is good and what they want to see.
Yep.
Um, ah,
Yeah. It's wild that
there's
it cuts both ways. That,
it's
like, yeah, it's great to have standards, rules such as no underage content, which every site should have, but not all sites do, or they don't enforce
yeah,
particularly well when it comes to wedgie fish content. But the other, of course, side of that sword is that you can limit people from, making the kind of content they want or
mm-hmm,
something, like on the
yeah,
Lucky Fish Forums case, which has strict rules and a community who, for a time, would be very quick to say, "There's an underage character here, you got to change this," just instantly calling it out,
although there
not
are some
standing for
stories
it.
that were overlooked for whatever reason. Just nobody ever
Yes,
caught it.
as
I
we've
don't
seen in
know.
history. Yep, nobody saw it, nobody read some of those, or no one commented. But there's a few good examples we have, like the remote, where they say, "Oh, that sister's underage" or whatever.
Yeah.
You got to
Or
not include her or change it, and so, etc. So, but like so that's good. But to have those rules, to have the standards, to make sure some stuff is avoided that we all agree should be avoided, but of course, then yeah, does that mean you're not getting any content, any MF, or very very little, very like as you noted rightly, there's a little bit of that, a
yeah,
couple guys, but does that mean you're really limiting what people can see? Um, and so or what even is considered good, even if there's a huge variety in types of stories, if like you can't do something really crazy and experiment, or if someone writes something, it's their first story and it's not as good, do they get kind of bashed? It's like that's not how you kind of inspire new creatives, that's not how you build a community.
yeah,
But could that be a consequence, of a community that's very tight rules and strict requirements, whereas compared to it's more, I don't know, free flow, like
yeah,
DA, where you could write something and if it's you're not you might not get it noticed, so that means you might not also get hated on if it's
yeah,
bad or something.
yeah. I mean,
So like it's kind of wild. It's a big
yeah,
thing. It's a big big topic.
absolutely. I mean, there's just the unspoken rules even of like of etiquette on these different platforms. Like I'm very familiar with Lucky Fetish and DA, and LF. It's very obviously made to give feedback, and that's
Hmm.
what people do.
Yep.
And how you give feedback is pretty structured as well. It's I felt that it pretty much all the feedback that you see on Lucky Fetish is very constructive, and you
Mm.
give a little,
Yeah.
you give what you like, but you also say what could have been better. DA is you favorite it, and that's how you show support and feed, and you liked it. And
Yeah.
very rarely you leave a comment saying like, "Oh, this was
Yep.
great. I want to see more." Like
Yeah.
it's like the etiquette that you use on each platform is very different. Just those unspoken
It's
rules
true.
that you come to
It's true.
understand after a while.
Yeah, yeah, and I wonder, like, very quickly, but not to sort of go over this too much, because I'm sure there's other stuff to talk about. But what if you couldn't just leave a favorite on DA? I wonder if people would comment more if they wanted to show love. Whereas, like, it's kind of like, oh, I can just leave a favorite, and I'll maybe come back later and leave a comment later. But they don't for whatever reason. I wonder, like, if it was like a Lucky Fish forums case where you had the only way was leaving a comment, if people would maybe comment more. I don't know though, probably not, because like if you think Lucky Fish forums, with a few exceptions for the very popular stories, comments weren't like flowing like water or anything on that site for the
No, but
most part.
it was still pretty easy to get at least one or two.
It's true. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. But those bigger threads, they got quite a lot, and
It's
it's just people having conversations, talking to each other, discussing things. Like,
yeah.
yeah. Um, is it okay to not be the best? And what I mean by that is, do all stories need to be written perfectly, or is it a good thing to have ones that are, say, less eloquent or grammatically correct, regardless of the subject matter?
Oh, this is great. Oh yes, I can talk about the points. So what a great transition. But I'll let Chaos go first. Chaos would like to go first.
Mm, for me, it's do what you can and not necessarily worry about the perfectionism. Because if you're just worried about the latter, then when do you actually get to releasing the content? Especially where, in the case of Lucky Fetish, eventually you couldn't just edit your stories whenever you wanted to. So it's at that point it was just a one and done, unless Lucky gave you admin roles to make edits to your stories. So I, for me, I would say try to do your best, but don't worry about it necessarily being the best.
Love that. That's great. Yeah, and I have a secret for all the writers in the community. It's a secret, but it's also a fact that we know for a fact, and that's that you don't have to be perfect. Not only can I say that, but we know that for a fact. Because think about this: we know, roughly speaking, that almost half of all wedgie fetishists is 42%. Say the characters who are getting the wedgie makes a wedgie sexual or a turn on. That's from Arc Times Wedgie Community poll in 2016. Going a step further, way more than half, that's 70%, say the number one aspect that makes them read or enjoy a Wedgie story is the characters. The characters beat out the plot, they
Mm-hmm.
beat out the title, they beat out who wrote it, and they beat out the grammar. So you can have a terribly written story from a nobody, but most of the community, they're just primarily concerned with if they like your characters. That's all you gotta worry about. Have fun, make some wild characters, you know? We can, what I think we can never forget is that when I asked the community, what's the number one emotion that you feel about your fetish? The most common response was shame. That's from my demographic survey in 2022. And I think stories are how we change that number, we reverse it from being shame that people feel, you know? Stories in the videos and the pictures and all the stuff we've been talking about, and the conversations, the role plays people do, it's in everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we share who we are, who we want to be, and who we've been, all that. So you don't have to be perfect. Perfect is the enemy of fun, of growth, of getting better. You have to experiment, you have to bomb, you have to try random stuff that maybe no one reads or gets or enjoys, like writing a wedgie story without using the letter E. I'm waiting for someone else to do that, except for me, because no one else is gonna do it. Um,
You've been waiting a
and it,
while.
it's trying stuff and writing stuff and remembering, like, you don't have to worry about being perfect. People don't care about the grammar. We know that for a fact. Like, they don't. You think, oh, but grammar's important. Yeah, but more important is the characters. Can you make characters that people enjoy and have fun seeing? You know? You think about some of well, of course, the example we all use now, Between Two Cheeks. It was just Ashley and Luna. Like, that was it. Like,
Yeah.
it was those characters, that very simple dynamic of these total opposites. And it's like that's what the appeal was, seeing these two tropes kind of fill this very archetypal, very sort of arousing dynamic of the bully and the nerd, and it's like that was enough to create a big business out of and a huge community of fans and a fandom, like that's
Yeah.
it. And those stories weren't like perfect. They weren't Shakespeare or whatever. you know. Some of them were a bit weird, and some definitely got a lot of pushback, but they were great characters, and they were really fun and wild, and people enjoyed seeing, and they want to see more of. So that's all, like I'm not perfect. I'm not the best at this, but I've gained a big audience as Chaos is done quite well. I love Chaos stories. Chaos knows I'm a huge fan. Nufator, as you know, your stories have touched me. Like none of us, I would say, and I'm sorry if this insults you. We're not like the best writers ever. We're learning, we're growing, and I think that's critical to writing, trying to go out there and be like, yeah, I'm the best, and I have to write perfect stories, and this is going to change the world. It's like, no, like what you're trying to change is yourself. You're trying to grow. You're trying to experiment. Like you can never.
Yeah.
That's why I don't. Like I understand, but I don't understand. People are like, "Oh, I've written all I can," or I'm leaving the community. I don't want to do this anymore." It's like, why do you limit yourself or say you're done writing? And when people say they're done writing, I'm like, don't like writing, it doesn't have to end. Like you can just come back to it whenever, like and keep trying and keep doing it. Like it's one of the healthiest ways, as you said, enough, like to let out stress, to vent, to get yourself out of a dark place. So I think it's such a beautiful thing that
Hmm.
everyone should do if they're inclined to it, and just keep trying it and doing it, because like
Yeah.
people are there to read your stories and they need your stories,
Hmm.
and they
Yeah.
don't need to not even be perfect. They don't need to be super dramatic, crazy, dark stories that try to sum up all of life or even tell huge, super dramatic arcs. Another value of stories is making people laugh. And I feel like I've mentioned this to both of you multiple times, but I always think of Sullivan's Travels, an old movie from the 30s or 50s, and it's such a beautiful movie. It's about a director who's like made comedies, and he's like, "Oh, I finally want to make the big drama film, the great big American movie." And he ends up going on this adventure across America and experiencing some pretty hard things, and he really sees how hard life is. And he sort of realizes at the end of this of like, people need to laugh. Like there's such a value in that, and he didn't realize that, of like there's such value in entertaining people. And so that's why people who are like, "Oh, but I don't like that funny comedy movie. That's not Orson Welles, Citizen Kane." It's like, but don't you understand that there's value there too, and like people can laugh and they can enjoy it. And it's like that's storytelling to me. It's being open to everything, trying everything, and just try and make people feel stuff,
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah. I mean, it
Mhm.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
the important part of being a writer is, are you conveying your ideas? Are those ideas something that readers are liking? You don't have to be perfect. And it's the same with any other creative field. If you're only looking for perfectionism, then that is the biggest enemy for growth. You accept what your abilities are, and you learn to try to take constructive feedback, but be patient with yourself. Learn what areas you could do better. Not necessarily that you need to be better,
Yeah.
but you take that journey to improve yourself.
Absolutely.
Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. I mean,
Well said.
perfection is the death of creation.
Nice. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I.
And
I mean.
I think to put it bleakly, storytelling is the art of limiting disappointment. By that I mean like disappointment in yourself, since you get the story in your head, and as writers, I think you both, maybe you can imagine this, or maybe you've never had this experience, but it's in your head, it's so clear that when you go to write it, there's that concern and that fear of like, is this going to be how I imagine it? Are they going to
Yeah.
see what I see? And the
Yeah.
concern that no, I'm not conveying this right, I'm not capturing it how I wanted to. And so that disappointment, trying to limit it within yourself to get it as right as you can, as close as you can to what it is you imagined and pictured and dreamed. and then also, disappointment in the audience potentially if you're adapting something to the screen and you're trying to go one to one, or you're not, you're doing something totally different. How do you do that in a way that keeps the audience not disappointed? And I think in anything, even if we keep talking along these philosophical lines of, we're telling ourselves stories, and the stories we're telling about ourselves to other people, it's trying to not make these stories too disappointing generally. It's like, I have grown, I'm here, I was at that point, and I'm here. That's the story I'm telling people. It's like trying so they're not disappointed in me and I'm not disappointed in myself. So when I think about, what we do in the community with readers, we're trying not to disappoint, whether we, acknowledge it or not, or even realize it or not, because when we write something, it's disappointing. We don't want to disappoint ourselves, especially at the very least. But the more you create, the more you think like, I just want people to enjoy this and be happy. So that's a core part of it for sure, I think, as well.
Yeah. I mean, something to remember is that at the end of the day, we're all human. And
Yes.
on some level, we all experience the same things, the same emotions.
Yes. Yep.
And writing is a fantastic way of helping you process things in your life that you might be struggling with or that you're just
Hmm.
not quite sure how to come to terms with. And
Yeah.
so just writing down your own experiences, maybe with some kind of flair, some kind of like dressing it up
Yeah.
differently so it's not a one to one. This is what happened to me.
Yes.
People connect with that kind of story all the time. It's not going by
Yes.
principle. It's not going to appeal to everybody, but
Yes.
you will get that core audience of like people who just who understand and relate to it. Like having a story
Yeah.
relatable is another big factor for enjoying and getting value out of something.
Yeah. And to be understood, I think it's something I want out of
Yeah.
life very much. And to be like, yeah, you see me in what I've written or something. And, at the very least, it's venting. But when you hear, someone say, yeah, this touched me, or I had a similar experience, and this meant something to me, or you inspired me, with your storytelling, and now I'm writing, it's like, to me, it's like the most beautiful thing in the entire world, that a person can do that, just by telling a story. And I think we can never forget the power it has.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do we need to all read the same stories?
Oh wow, good question. I think there's stories
Unfortunately, no.
everybody should read before they die. But yeah, see, if we all read the same stories, then we'd all kind of be the same, and that's a depressing world.
Well, potentially, but I mean, we
To
are all different. We all look at things differently. And so, like, even just looking at Lucky Fetish, we
to
were all reading the same stories, but the kinds of stories that were put out were very different from each other in multiple
That's
ways.
true. That's true. We all write very different stories because there's more to our story diet than just what we saw there. For all three of us, it's very different other media
Yeah,
that we consume, like Chaos with the anime, which I was not raised on in the way Chaos was. So I can see that in Chitoro's Alchemy Trials,
yeah.
and hopefully one day the cat version Katoru's Alchemy Trials that I may write because I love that story. But yeah, I mean, certainly, yeah, you're right. I feel like there's a value in a lot of stories I recommend for people to read, and I say everybody should read The Stand, for example, by Stephen King, and a lot of Stephen King works in general. But yeah, I think certainly people should also be checking out other stuff they know they're interested in because of how they were raised, or for whatever reason, whatever sort of sparked something in them and touched them as well, and really just find what they love. Don't read what everybody tells you to read unless it's me and I say The Stand and go read that. But just because it's on the curriculum of school, that doesn't have to be the only thing you read. You can find other stuff for sure.
Yeah. I think we should all have the same access to
Mm,
stories,
yeah, for sure.
as we've said, with how spread out everything is. You're lucky if you find a good story to share, let alone a fantastic one. Um, and
Yeah.
it's just it is very difficult to find stories in general. But the
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is. I don't know if there really is a right answer for this, but I mean,
Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe not, but I do love, of course, the idea of access. That's why
yeah,
why I started the wiki for the community for a little bit, but that was
yes,
difficult.
some kind
And
of index
just the
page.
idea, yeah, exactly. Just the idea of keeping things saved, like a library, an archive,
Yeah.
because there's many times where writings like a story and people will come to me because I'm so active and they'll be like, "Hey, do you have this?" And I'll be like, "No." And it's just totally lost to the ether and it's
Mm-hmm.
depressing. Um and or even writers who just aren't active anymore and you wonder like, well, maybe we could continue their work in some way or do something with them. And yeah, it's so access so important and trying to keep something of the past alive, which is its own story, the need to do that and what it means for the community. I feel it's important to the community, but maybe others would not, and that's their own story for it.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that a big reason why Lucky Fetish was the place to frequent and still is for some people is because we were a tight community where users knew each other and recognized ones they didn't personally know, where we all talked about and we all experienced the same stories, videos, pictures, what have you. Um, and if it weren't for that, stories like Luckily Unlucky might never have become the classics they are simply because
Yeah.
they wouldn't have had the same reach.
Yep. It's true.
But there are a number of benefits to being spread out, as we discussed earlier.
Hmm. Yeah. It is a complicated answer, and it is, I suppose, what community is at its core. Being a lot of places, so we're not all the same. And it's
Yeah,
kind of, one way of saying what we've said in a few different ways here. Uh, because not being all the same in the storytelling, uh, and how that plays out in general. Yeah.
yeah. But even looking at stories from all different kinds of platforms and different mindsets and different groups, we've historically gravitated towards fictionalized reality, where the events that take place could happen in real life, but they could be a
Mm.
little bit exaggerated and sometimes more than a little bit, but they're still
Yes.
based in reality in planet Earth. Why do you think
Yes.
we've done that?
It's more
I
arousing
think
that way.
part
It's more arousing, I think, to see it. Sorry, chaos. Yeah, I feel like that's the simple answer because when people have these fantasies, I think generally speaking, the simplest route to arousal is like, here's something identifiable and simple and taps into some, you know, recognizable archetype of the bully and the nerd in a school, or the cheerleader, or the hot, sister and the younger sister kind of thing. And I think when we're in need of a fix, so to speak, those are the things we gravitate towards, those things that are recognizable and that we could see ourselves watching or in those situations. And it's easier, I suppose, more accessible than like, oh, I have to read through this detailed description of science fiction and a spaceship and a crew before I can get to the wedgie with an alien and they experience wedgies differently. It's like, no, it's too complicated. Like, give me the hot bullies and nerds, and that's it. So I think that's why we probably gravitate towards some of that. And I suppose from writing perspective, it's probably easier as well. So not just kind of more accessible for readers, but it's easier to the whole cliche, which I think isn't really accurate, of write what you know, which has some
Yeah,
value, but is obviously frightening if that's all you do. Um, so I feel like a lot of people probably stick to that to start. In some cases, others, start fan fictions of other stuff.
yeah,
But I think a lot of people probably start with some of that. In our experience, a lot of first stories are like, yeah, the bully's picking on the nerd, and this very popular trope in the community. And it's very nice to see because I'm very much into that. But certainly, yeah, you wonder like where are more epic fantasy stories with wedgies, and those would be nice to read. Although certainly, I think we can all say there are times where we're like, just let me go back to this simpler story of the bully
Yeah.
picking on the nerd because that's what we're in need of. But there's value in both, and the audiences have shown that they can appreciate both, and will show love for both. So don't be scared,
Yeah.
even if one seems like simpler and more accessible to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that saying that you said, the write what you know, should be expanded to be write what you know and learn what you don't.
Nice, good. That's a good expansion to that old cliche. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think those are all reasons why. Very good reasons. What do you think, Chaos?
Uh, to very much add on to that point, I think that's a big appeal for some types of works compared to others, like for the World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness game lines, that they are close to our world, but it's also including just enough of a mystery that that it pulls you in, but it's not so foreign. Where, uh, like in this example, like compared to D&D, where you're not having to worry about how does the society work and all that kind of stuff, where you're not necessarily putting in the extra work to make it work, where we try to gravitate towards stuff what is familiar compared to the abstract, just because of we want things more relatable than the just purely the unknown, or having to wonder how does that work.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
think that's a big reason why we gravitate towards either the modern day or fantasy, where it feels very similar to our reality with some changes to it.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, if it's resonant with you, if you feel some kind, it it seems the easier it is for you to feel like you can jump into that world, like you can put yourself into those characters' shoes. It's the easier it is to connect with it.
Yeah. And we talked about Harry Potter, and
Yeah.
it's of course it doesn't get more fantastical than that in some ways. And
No.
it's people have shown they can get into, the character's shoes and they can embrace it and they can love it. So, it's like we said, the value of it is obviously there. It's more difficult in wedgie fish fiction where the point is to arouse, um, and so we have to keep that in mind. But I still feel like, and as we've done podcast episodes on these stories, like um the arena, but there's the better example, the
That's more of a game.
Star Strider one. Star Strider. Did we talk about Star
No,
Strider?
there was nothing in an
We
episode.
might
I
have.
was thinking the heist, really.
The Heist is by the same writer who's doing Star
Yeah.
Striders, I believe is the title.
Yeah.
Pony X9. So, yeah, and I mean these stories, yeah, like that, where there's some deep fantasy element, perhaps, or sci-fi, or whatever genre, and the point, it's probably also to arouse, but it's not as explicit potentially, or maybe it's not even that. The better way to phrase it is maybe there's a great preoccupation with a very detailed plot. And of
Yeah.
course, the problem with saying that is a lot of these stories we're mentioning, like the heist, there's one or two posts.
Yeah.
They don't get to expand into the world we'd like them to be, but
Uh,
we do want them to be that, and we would like to see them
yeah.
become deep fantasy worlds we can get lost in. And the wedgies, hopefully they're there and present. Hopefully they also turn us on. But
Yeah.
I personally think I'd be into those even if they weren't if I'm hooked on the characters, we said we know most people in the community think is the most important part, and it's what they read stories for and what they enjoy the most, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I probably the most fantasy story that I've read is 3 by Nicely Done.
Yep, yep, good example.
Yeah. Very, very deep cut.
Yes.
Yeah. Are there any stories that have caught either of you guys' eyes recently?
And check my favorites because there's been a few I've been reading and favoriting. I try to keep up on some stuff in
Yeah.
general,
But as you
although
said,
you
it
could
is a
always
lot
do
of
more.
work.
It is a lot. I mean, it's fun for those who haven't noticed yet because it just happened. But Magni Pulse came back with Calypso
Yep.
Academy Battle Royale Chapter 1 yesterday. Um, and it's a very wild return with basically all wedgies pretty much. But if you like that sort of Calypso verse universe and some of those characters like Haley the Bully, who we all love, um, that's a fun one. So he's a big name, but a writer who I've sort of known and I think is quite popular already, but Car Five Sir. It's probably not how you pronounce it, but they have a series of stories called "The Girl in My Dreams Has a Wedgie Fetish." It's got like 3 parts, and they're all quite popular. The parts, and they're somewhat recent. Part 1 was in December 2023. And the others more recent. Those are quite good and a lot of fun, quite hot. So I
Yeah.
recommend those as well.
Yeah. Doesn't
Those
have
are a
to be
few.
story.
There's a couple more, but
Doesn't
those are a couple of
It
the
doesn't
most recent
necessarily
ones.
have to be stories that came out recently, just ones that you found recently.
Yeah, totally. I guess one example of that is A Tale of Two Roommates by Rockubia 2. That was like July 2023, but I only just noticed it. Um, for example, when I was looking for some more FM stuff. Um, Alyssa's Fantasies is one summer camp wedgie, which I was reading. I don't really remember this one, but I faved it. So you can look at my favorites as well on my page for a look at what I'm reading and what I'm liking. There's also occasionally pieces of art there I'll fave if I like it. Um, I'm trying more recently to find more stories that are new or I haven't noticed. They don't have to be new to me, as you
Yeah,
said.
that's
Well
exactly
said,
it.
no,
Yeah.
new to me, and I'll be trying to favorite some more and commenting as well when I can. And there's a couple on Lucky Fish forums. There's 2 new ones: the Wedgie Tax and the Nerds Revenge, a Wedgie Nightmare, that are quite new. So Lucky Fish forums not dead yet. There's a
Nope.
few of us
Nope.
still banging around down there.
Yeah.
An empty audience, but we're there. And I'm commenting on those posts. That's how I'm still on there. I haven't posted anything new there in a little bit. But yeah, 2 new stories, and they're fun. One of them's Wedgie Taxes FM, and a Nerd's Revenge, a Wedgie Nightmare. Is fun, sort of FF, bully nerd sort of stuff. It's fun though. I recommend them both.
Nice. Nice. Have you found any recently, Chaos?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, all
I
right.
have been so busy with my own work and uh, just haven't really had time to go over through other stories or whatnot.
All right. Well, yeah, I've
Or especially at this point where I'm just doing more research, and unfortunately, the text to speech is messed up for the one novel that I bought, so it's that has taken some time to kind of get the book reformatted so that I can actually go through the story. But yeah,
all right.
just busy making my own stuff at the moment.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm sure when you're finished with it, it'll come out really nicely. But just, remember, it is important to take breaks once in a while.
Mm, it's true.
Uh, the only one that really comes to mind for me is Anno Manhattan. It's the
Oh
rewrite
yes,
that
yeah, the rewrite, yes.
Von John W's been doing, and he's done a really fantastic job with it so far, and he's got plans for more. So hoping
Yay!
it
Plants.
gets to the end. But yeah, really good stuff. I definitely recommend that one.
Nice.
I have a little bit of Lucky Fetish trivia for you guys if you're interested.
Yay! Let's go.
So I have a couple of questions, and I'm curious if you guys know the answers to them. And you're welcome to work together to figure out the answers.
Let's
Uh,
go.
just don't look it up because that'll nullify. um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I want to see if you know it off memory. So
Okay.
can you name the title and writer of the first original story posted in the fictional section?
Oh, damn. It's like Nico Pink Star or something like that is like the first one. Right, Chaos? What do you Chaos, you might remember. You were there. Right? First days you were there, I think. Is that like Nico Pink Star or something like that?
Wasn't that only in the
Oh,
non-human
damn.
section though?
You might be right. But I feel like,
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember that page. There was like was it Sarah the Bully was on that last page, I think? I'm trying to picture it in my head. It might be Sarah Bully. I feel like there's a Nico Star Pink there or something. It might I could be wrong.
If
The
it
Mortal
is, it's
Kombat
on the
thing isn't the
non-human
last page.
section,
Yeah.
and that originally came from the Wedgie board. So
Yes.
Jack
Yeah.
538 didn't initially bring it over,
Yeah. So some round did. I don't think Wedgie
but
Academy
that
was
was
there
the creator of that series.
on that last page. Wedgie Academy. It was soon after though, and yeah, brought it there. Uh, Damn, no, what is it? Am I even close? What's the first one ever?
those are very good guesses, but the one that I found was Bully Story by Bat Dad.
Oh, okay. Was Sarah the Bully on that page? Is there a story of Sarah Bully or something
Oh,
on that
I
page?
don't remember.
Was I right on any of those? Is there a Nico Star Pink or something?
There is a Nico something. I don't remember the
On that
title
last
of it, but
page, right?
it's
Damn.
not on
See,
that
I got
page.
that much.
It's not on that. It's
Oh,
not
it's
on the
not.
last page
Okay.
though.
All right. Oh, I got
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Disappointing. Come on, Chaos. All right, what's the next question? We need
Can
redemption
so
round.
now in the reverse of that, can you name the most recent one as of this recording?
Yeah, it's the one I just said, Nerd's Nightmare. That's the most recent one.
Yeah. Who's the writer?
The writer is Wedgie Guy 90.
Close, but you dude. 90.
Wedgie
That was
Dude
good
90.
enough though.
Oh, I was
You got it.
close. I
You
was
basically
two
got
out
it.
of two, two
But
out of three
yeah,
other names.
it's
Oh,
just a little funny. We really haven't gone very far from home when naming our stories.
yes, yeah. A Nerd's Revenge. Yeah, Wedgie
Yeah,
Nightmare. Yeah,
it's a Nerd's
right.
Revenge, a
Okay,
Wedgie
yeah.
Nightmare.
I have it. I have it in my head.
Uh,
Nice. Wedgie
yeah,
Dude 90. Yeah, I was
yeah.
close.
And then one final question, and this is multi-part answer. Can you name the title and writer of the most popular fictional story for each year from
Each
2011
year.
to
Oh, okay.
2023? And for
Oh my
this
god.
question, I'm going by the final posting date. So if a story was started in one year but ended in a different one, that story would count for the latest year was posted on. Although some
Okay.
topics do have bumps which brought them back after years of inactivity, and in that case I
Yeah.
didn't count them.
Okay. So let's try. I'm gonna need a
So
piece of paper for this. Damn, this is gonna be wild. I should have
yeah.
prepared for
You can
this.
jump
Okay.
around, you can go in order, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So 2011. Yes, you have to help me out. So we have Luckily Unlucky and Sorware. They're 2013, right? 2013 or no? Or they start 2011?
Both of them started in
I want to
well,
say
Luckily Unlucky started in 2011.
they
Yeah. But
I believe,
yeah,
what
they're
started in
you
being
wanted the most
2012.
continued.
recent date? You wanted
Yeah,
like
when did it
you
end
wanted
on?
so it might be 2013 for one of those. For Luckily Unlucky might be 2013. Maybe. 2015 we know is Lucy and Daniela. It's gotta be. Um by me, Wedgie. hannsgutherson. I'd laugh if I'm wrong. It's like, no, it's a random story.
Mhm.
The remote might be 2012.
Well, if you said it in an answer, if you give me a definitive answer, I can tell you what.
Well, gotta give you the whole list. We're going through the whole. This is gonna take us like an hour, though.
Well, let's
You're
okay. So
not-
let's go year by year then. So 2011. What do you think is the number one?
Oh, that's how we're gonna do this. Oh, we can't even narrow it down. Oh, we can't even get 2023 yet. Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's guess it then. Chaos. So we're not here all day, I guess. 2011. Damn. It could be the remote, right? Maybe. Or is that later?
I would think so, but I'm blanking on all the stories that came out in the early days,
You
or
want to guess
ones
it?
that didn't continue beyond it. Yeah,
Yeah. Do you want
let's
to?
go with that.
Okay. Let's guess the remote by Vickers for
Okay.
2011.
It
Is that
was
right?
the Wedgie Ninja by Tidy Whitey 711.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
I figured you
Yeah, I
guys would
remember.
recognize it if I said the title. It's got
Yeah,
almost
I remember.
262,000 views for 2011.
This is a fun game.
Yeah.
Why didn't we do this
So
sooner? That's great.
I just thought of
Okay,
it. So
so
that's why.
yeah,
So
that's great.
2012. What
Yeah,
do you think is
2012.
the
So
one?
is this the remote chaos? Is this the year Vickers takes it for a remote or no? What do you think?
I remember the remote being pretty popular, so I
Yeah,
would hope, but I could be wrong.
Just think
Especially
about when
where
the remote came
I
out.
wasn't
you're probably not
aware of.
counting. You're probably not counting like as you wish, right? Or like the non-human stuff. You probably didn't look at those, right?
No, I just looked at the straight fictional.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we don't worry about as you wish, which was what year was that? It was 20. Might have been 2012 actually. Okay. Okay. I want to say do you want to guess the remote for 2012 Chaos?
Yeah, that feels about right.
Yeah, just stop
It's-
me if I try to guess it
okay.
for every year because we know it's not. Okay, let's
Well,
go with the remote 2012. Is that
All
right?
right. It was Catherine's Thong Wedgie Torture by CL Thong 2. It has over 134,000 views.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a popular one. Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
I'm 2 for 2 on fails. Oh.
2013.
Okay. I want to say luckily unlucky. What do you think, Chaos? Luckily unlucky?
Trying to think if it ended on 2013 or if it went into 2014. Because
That's
I
a good
know a
question.
few chapters came out after I started creating my own stuff. I think
I
it
feel
might be
like
2013 though.
yeah, I'm gonna let's go luckily unlucky anti-cherry 2013.
That is correct. It has almost
Yes.
312,000 views.
Yeah. All right. 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3, not bad. All right.
2014.
Damn. Okay. This is a harder one. I'm thinking sleep off today, but I'm thinking maybe not.
I could give you a hint on this one.
It'd be sore winner, but I
That
could be blood money, but I don't know about that. Might be blood money though. Might be blood. What do you think, Chaos?
Would
Any
you like a
guesses?
hint?
Yeah, what's the hint? We'll take the hint.
that would be appreciated.
Hans and I have discussed this story on this podcast.
So that narrows it down to about 400 stories. I've done the math. How many stories on there?
How many of
Forget
them
now.
have been lucky fetish stories, though? That's the thing.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. It might be blood money, but it could. Have we
Yeah, I'm
discussed our
thinking
winner? I
blood
can't remember.
money.
Let's go blood money by
Uh,
Nicely Done. Is that right?
I wanna say that or winner. No, how much longer
I mean, you're allowed to have
do they
different
keep
answers.
going on?
That's true. Chaos, you might beat me if you guess sore winner. I'm gonna go.
Yeah,
blood
I'll
money.
go with sore winner. You go with blood money.
Let's
I
do
have
it.
a feeling it's one of those two.
It was Karate Friends by Saseda with
I
almost
should have known
41,000.
that.
Now, Blood Money wasn't that popular.
Of course it was. No, you're right. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't popular in my heart. First in my heart, but yeah, Karate Friends. Yeah, 2014, of course. Yeah,
Now,
this is great.
2015.
What a fun game. It gotta be Lucy and Daniela. Gotta be Lucy and Daniela. By me. Final answer. I'm locking it in.
Are you in agreement, Chaos?
You are the writer, and I'm pretty sure you would have a good idea of when you ended the story, so I would go with that.
Well, depending on how you look at it, that is correct. But the way I looked at it is the fact that it still had ongoing discussion. I went I went with something different. I
The
went with
story was done in 2015 though. Like it was done. Like people commenting or whatever. Right or no? Am I wrong? Was it done later than I thought?
See, with Lucy and Daniela, I looked at it as the story still had, like, people were still discussing it for a little while after, and there weren't breaks. So I
For me,
had
it did in December.
I don't remember exactly the last day that Lucy and Daniela was posted on, but for 2015, I had the remote. That, that
The one story we thought was a lot sooner.
has over 264,000 views. It's VV Vickers. 2016.
Well, okay, all right. Weirdly, okay.
Mm,
If Lucianel's not 2015, and the remote is, then I guess yeah, Lucy and Daniela's got to be 2016, right? In this system.
you would think that the discussions won't be lasting too much longer after the story's concluded.
But now I'm questioning everything. If it's not 2015, maybe something else is 2016 or something. But I feel like it's gotta be. It's
I
bizarre.
guess I guess I looked at it wrong. Lucy and Danielle, looking at it, it did end in 2015, so I guess that counts. Well, 2016, I don't know the actual answer for then.
Right. Yeah, like 2016. I don't know. It came back to it randomly, make some post or something. But
Uh,
like it was like long. Yeah, 2015 was like for
well,
sure biggest story that year.
I can figure that out while you're figuring out the
Yeah,
answer to
we'll skip
2017.
2016, 2017. All right.
This one might not be so obvious.
I was gonna guess it was something by Anime Panties, but if you look on Lucky Fish forums, you know, stories aren't. I mean, two worlds. I think Friend Sessions
Yeah, I
did
was about to say,
pretty
wasn't
well.
it Two Worlds was around that time?
They were, yeah. It was, yeah. It could be one of his stories. It could be. I'm leaning on that. Hmm. I don't know. We might have to. I might guess one of his. 2017. Years after Lucy and Daniela. YWR is already done, but it didn't get huge numbers. Teacher Wedgie Fight, same thing. I don't think I got anything. I don't think I'm gonna make the list again. Uh, Although I might for something random. And the poor non-human writer is just ignored as always. But you know that struggle, chaos. I don't know. I guess maybe two worlds. I would guess by Anime Panties for 2017.
I'll go with that as well.
It was the Game of Thrones request topic. With multiple stories
Yeah,
written by Saseda, Yuhans, Prostagma, Doomguy 4321, and H2409 with over
See, you know what's
36,000
gonna be
views.
fun, Chaos, is if we can remember what year the short story thread launched, because that 100% is gonna be the biggest one for that year, and maybe even the following couple years, whatever year that was, might be 2018. I don't know. Oh boy.
Actually, how big did that community thing get?
Like the community stories,
Yeah.
those never big. I was thinking about the short stories like thread, like the one that Auntie Cherry started, and then like a bunch of people wrote short stories on. 'Cause
I
that's
would
like
have
one of the top
thought that
reviewed
came
pages.
before 2018, or maybe it was that same year.
Yeah,
Well, 2018.
like,
What are you thinking of there?
it's that short stories thread. Might be later though. It could be, although we're almost in the last couple years. Yeah, Game
I
of
will go
Thrones.
with the community short stories
Yeah,
project that
I'll
Hans and
do
them
that
were a
one.
part of.
Yeah, just that. Yeah, the short stories thread that Auntie Cherry started. Do that for
Okay.
2018. Is that right?
Well, I believe this is when the PHP update happened and made so many posts a real pain in the ass to read. Because this is where stories really start to drop in views. And if we were just
Yeah.
going by views, it would be the fetish stores thread that Jolly Jumper created. But
I
for
was thinking about
actual
that as we were talking.
stories,
Yeah.
it's Some Things Never Change by Scrin Warrior. It has almost 9,000
Uh,
views.
okay. I don't
Yeah,
remember that
definitely.
one, but I know the
Yeah, it's
title. Yes.
a very lesser known story by Scrin.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn. Wow. See these underdogs taking the top title. You can
Yeah,
do it too, writers.
yeah.
Damn.
2019. This one might not
Is
be.
this?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
I have a hint if you want it.
Yeah. What's the hint? I'll take the
When
hint.
did you and Shadow do Dulling of a Knife? Was that 2019 or was that a little later?
I want to say 2021 or two.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I just wasn't sure just how early it was when you guys released that.
Yeah. What's the hint though for what year are we on? 2019 now, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's the hint?
It's. It might not be how do I say? It might not be a story in the way that you think
Oh,
immediately of a story.
okay, that's scary.
Was
Maybe it
it one
is
of those
Jolly Jumpers.
interaction stories? Because it was around 2019 when those started popping off, didn't they?
Yeah, might be the first like community story. Although that seems late for that one. Yeah, no, it's too late for that first one. Um, I'm kind of stumped. There were a few like I'm thinking of old stories now that were one-off kind of interactive things, and they didn't really go anywhere, and they were a bit weird then on the board. 2019. I was gonna say like friend sessions, but I don't know if friend sessions
I thought
making this
Friend
list.
Sessions was earlier than 2019.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it was kinda. Yeah, not much earlier, I don't think, but. Oh, I guess it would have been because he was writing Two Worlds
Mm.
2016 or something, so it might have been. Damn, yeah, I got no clue for 2019. I guess I'll have to guess something. I'll have to guess like I'll guess like that community story. I guess started by is it Awesome as Poner who started the first one? The fantasy
No, that
one.
was always Pony Pony X9 always started the
Pony,
first
Pony
one.
X9. Yeah, that's right. I'll guess that one. I guess.
And in case if it's not that one, I'll guess Friend Sessions by Anime Panties.
It's a good guess. Feels 2019.
It was The Soccer Tradition audio by Jack
Oh,
HFD with over
yeah,
4,500
they
views.
posted it. Yeah, in the fictional
Yeah,
section. Yeah,
yeah. I
which was
counted it
fine. It's
because it
great.
was like
Yeah, it's
adding
posted there.
to the
So,
story.
yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a thread in there, and that's what we're looking at. Yeah, no, it makes sense. That was a good one. Yeah, that's a
Uh,
fun one to go back
uh,
to.
20.
There's another audio one, but I think he didn't post it in there in the thread, so I could be
Hmm.
wrong though. It's kind of better. It's like the sister Revenge of the Younger Sister. I think that's what it's called. I
Not
don't know if he
sure.
posted in that section, so he mustn't have, I guess, because it was quite hot. But yeah, it's better than the soccer tradition one.
Yeah, well,
But
so
it's a cool, like you said, it's a cool one picking up from the Wedgie Girls board,
for sure.
continuing,
Yeah.
like adapting. It's an adaptation, one of the rare adaptations we have in the community
Yeah.
of a Wedgie story, which is awesome.
So for
Yeah, okay,
2016, it was
yes.
Two Worlds just beat out High
Hey,
Velocity Superhero
Mm,
Wedgies.
oh wow, that's interesting.
Just at both over 17,000 views.
Wow. Yeah, like we said, Two Worlds not huge numbers. Friend Session,
No.
same thing. Although I think Friend Session did pretty good, better than YW and R. I think both of them did.
Yeah.
For context.
I mean, Friend Sessions has had a lot more engagement on DA anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
So
For sure.
2020.
Yeah. Oh damn, 2020. Getting into the recent years, we only got a couple more. What was big in 2020? Is the board starting to die out? What
I
was
think it started
big?
to die out in 2018, really.
Yeah, it's true. So the board is already dying. What do we have here? I'm drawing some blanks now, Chaos. It's funny that the further back we go, the better I am.
Well, I mean, we've had plenty of
I
discussions
I
about the
think
old stories.
the big reason is that as the we've gone to the later years of the board, a lot of it has kind of transferred to DA or other sites, so that kind of skews with how popular something was on Lucky Fetish itself compared to how its overall reception was.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's try and guess
2020
something.
though.
It should be, in theory, it should be
The only
easier to
thing I
figure
can
it
say
out
for
because of the
certain
less stories posted.
Yeah,
the only thing I
it's
can say for
harder.
certain, it's definitely none of my stuff since all of my stuff has been in the non-human
Yeah.
section.
Or non-human writers always getting the short end of the stick. Damn, what the hell would this be? Oh, there's the sister thing. There's also an afternoon atomic by Garrett. It might be one of those two. Around 2020.
I'm
I'll
gonna have
probably
to
guess
take
an
your word for it
afternoon
because I'm drawing
atomic.
blanks.
That's all I'll guess. I guess an afternoon atomic. I guess by Garrett.
Would you like a very vague hint?
Oh, I guess that's not right. Sure. What's the hint?
The writer is a very cool guy.
Cool guy. Now I'm
Someone tells me
overcomplicating
cool
the hint
something
in
is
my head.
in their username.
I'm overcomplicating the hint. I'm thinking ice now. I'm thinking water, and that's not helpful because I know that's not where I'm supposed to go with it. I feel like I should know this, and it should be obvious. 2020.
It will be when I say the
Oh,
title.
but when is it's more recent, right? Chaos, the witch in the story with the witch. You know what I'm talking about? That's more recent, right?
So
I guess that wasn't helpful. I'm
when
thinking of
did
the very
Calypso
popular
Academy end?
story where they basically they don't like do interdimensional travel, but they sort of just do a lot of crazy magic stuff. And it's very popular in recent years. Oh my god. I think that's like 2022 or though or something or
Actually, I guess
2023.
that's another question. Did Magnipul's post Calypso Academy onto Lucky Fetish, or was that
No.
more on
No,
DA?
never. That was only
Okay,
DA.
Yeah, that's all DA, yeah. So we don't have any of those stories that we can reference. Cool. There's not nicely done, but I feel like I know what you're talking about.
You'll know exactly what I'm
But
talking about.
cool.
You'll be
I
saying,
want to
why
say
didn't I think
literally
of that?
I am. I know I am. I know it because I'm pretty sure. Like in the back of my mind, I'm like I was like I feel it, but I have no clue. Um,
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure.
2020.
All right.
So weird. That's way harder to get 2020. I have no clue.
You
I
want to hear
guess
the
something
answer?
random though. What's it? Was it
Well, again,
witchcraft?
the views are very different.
What's that other? It's like the two. I forget the two names of the girls. It's probably older though. What was that called? Can't remember. Yeah. Okay. What is it? So I
It's
could be
Trials
suffering.
of Befriending a Trickster by K. Cool,
That's the
with over
witch one.
12,000.
No.
That's the witch one. That's the
The
one I was talking
genie,
about. Yeah.
genie.
That's the one. But I said it was later. I was wrong on all the points.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said it was a witch one, and yeah. But I said it was later. Ah, that was trials.
Yeah.
So I kind of had it, but I didn't have trials. Oh. So I'm
2021.
deaf. I don't know what these ones are. Uh
I would like to hope it's Dulling a Knife,
oh, wouldn't that be nice? Maybe I'm
but
lucky and the next couple ones are mine. Was that even 2021 though? Imagine how embarrassing it will be if it's like, no, that was the next year. I don't even know.
that's
Um,
the
I
that's the
don't.
big worry is not paying attention to when something necessarily came out or when it necessarily finished,
Yeah.
and just the story getting more notoriety from other places than Unlucky Fetish itself.
Yeah. Screw it. Let's guess. Why not? Dulling a Knife by me and Shell Melder for 2021.
It was the short stories thread with
Yeah, that's
over.
what it
No.
is.
People kept
That's
writing
the
stories in it
one.
with almost
Yeah.
331,000 views. Can you name all
Yeah.
of the people who have posted a story in there?
I can name
Nope.
several of them. Jack 538 did
Yep.
I'm Dead. Anti Cherry's written a few, including Hallow Wedgie. Myself, I've written in there. So that's three. Is that three? Yeah, something like that. There's a strange KMF story that's on the first page as well at the bottom. I can't remember who wrote it. That's like four writers there. And I kept writing in it. Did I say Cecita? Cecita's got one, I think, in there. Who am I missing?
Anti Cherry, the ones that you
Yeah,
actually
so
named are
him.
correct.
Yeah,
I'm not counting that one that you didn't give a name for.
yeah. No, I wouldn't either. Yeah, who am I missing though?
You know
There's
any
there's that
chaos?
one at the bottom. Oh yeah, Chaos. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I didn't read that thread, so I don't know who all contributed to it.
Oh, you're missing out on some fantastic stories. You gotta read it.
Yeah.
Well,
Been
you got
busy with my own stuff.
so you got Anti Cherry, Jack
Yep.
538,
Yep.
Cecita, and yourself.
Yeah. Myself. Yeah.
There was also Vivi Vickers.
Oh
There's
yeah.
Jazzed Up, Punching Your Nuts. Most of these guys you're probably just like not gonna recognize. Wedgie Man
Yeah.
888. He did other things. Silver Eye Patch, Anime Panties, Shadow Melder, and K Cool.
Sounds like 11. I counted right. Damn, I forgot Shell Melder wrote a story in
12.
there. 12. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
2022.
Please let it be Dulling a Knife.
Yeah, I'll give you a
This
hint for
could
this one. It's
be.
close to home.
Yeah, gotta be done knife, right? I guess. I guess dying a knife by me and Shell Melder. Do we take it?
So that's
Did
both
we
of
do
yours.
good?
That's both of your guess.
That's gonna be my big guess.
All right. It was Fortunate Events by me with over 7,000.
Yay! There it
Ah,
is. Yeah, dying knife didn't do too well there.
No, neither of your
Like,
novels have done very well on the ones that
yeah,
you posted on Lucky Fetish.
yeah. We get huge numbers on DA, like we break
Yeah,
the bank, but Lucky Fish forums, it
couple
like
thousand.
we knew, like we said, 2018, the numbers have been dying off. So like
Yeah,
it's not surprising, despite the effort we put in on that
yeah.
site. So yeah, no, nice. Congrats on
Wow.
that. That's awesome, Fortune, man. It's very
Well,
nice. Love that story.
2023.
Yeah. 2023. The last year, right? This is the last one you looked at?
Yeah, because 2024 is not over yet.
Exactly. Just checking. In case you're like, no, I got one.
And I
Okay.
think the difference in a lot of the couple of stories that have been posted this year would be in the single digits for view
Yeah,
differences. So
it's true. It's true. Um,
When did Flame Over Darkness end? Was that 2022 or was that 2023?
it's probably not that one, but it would have been like 2022, 2023 kind of thing.
I have a hint
I mean,
if
I
you
wrote
want it.
those short stories, but they probably weren't it. And there's like that one thread, which is just like, but I don't know if you'd count that.
I have a hint if you'd like it.
Yeah, what's the hint? So I know it's not that one thread.
It came back from the dead.
Oh, so I guess it is the one I was thinking of, surprisingly. Is it that thing that's like awesome stories from the old board or something? By is it Ariel? Is it that? That's my guess, I guess. Hopefully that's not it. I don't know if that I guess if they wrote new stuff, but I couldn't remember.
What do you think, Chaos?
The thing that sucks is I know As You Wish returned back in 2023.
Oh, I
So
hope it's
it's
that.
now it's I'm pretty sure it got continued in the non-human setting. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of
true.
what else returned.
Oh, you know what?
Unfortunately, I'm
Also
I'm not
might
overly
be.
familiar because again, getting too caught up in my own research and creating stuff, so I'm not too
No, I
familiar.
think I know it. I think I know this one finally. So it's not, thankfully, not that weird one I mentioned. I'm feeling like it's feeling the fire until it burns. Nicely done.
Is that your answer?
That's my guess. Yeah, that's my answer now.
That is correct. It's over 11,000. Yeah,
Yes.
I was gonna say if you
Woo!
had stayed with your first answer, you would have been slapping yourself because we had a whole
Yeah,
podcast about
we
it.
did. We did. Yeah, we did. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that old post, I guess, just because it's for old views or whatever, it has a lot of views.
Yeah, that's the
So that's
thing.
what I was
Yeah.
saying. When you look at that, you're like, why did this got all these like 30K views or whatever it's got?
All right. Well, I hope that was fun.
Yeah, it was like a lot of fun. What a surprise. We should have done that way sooner.
Yeah. I would have if I had thought about it sooner. I just thought about it a couple days ago. I was like, oh, this could be. I don't know what else you could really do it for, but I'll try and come up with other trivia topics to cover. Well, is there anything else either of you would like to discuss?
No, we covered so much. I'm
Yeah,
glad to be back and that you wanted to have me on. It's nice to be
absolutely.
invited.
Well, is there anything that either of you'd like to promote?
I would say this podcast, reading more stories and writing. I think it's the healthiest and one of the healthiest, I suppose, ways to vent and find yourself and find peace. So I highly recommend it. And yeah, for sure, you can check out my page for more examples of storytelling and my favorites. Look at those for examples of what I'm reading and other creators out there deserve a lot of love.
100%.
And then yeah, hopefully by the time this podcast is out, I will have the next story for New Life out since I've had the story written for what feels like a month already, and I already have the story after that halfway written already. But hopefully, I will have that out by the time this podcast is out.
Yes, keep an eye out for that.
Nice. Awesome.
All
Looking
right.
forward to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for coming on.
Glad to be back.
Thank
Thank you.
thank you for
Fantastic
having us.
conversation. Yeah, I had a really good time. So, for all the people listening, thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Best Book Club.